What happens when a beloved television host comes face to face with royal entitlement gone wrong? It only took 21 seconds for Prince Harry to completely destroy his reputation on live television last night, in what insiders are calling the most shocking celebrity meltdown ever captured on camera. This is the exclusive story of how Graham Norton, the man we all love for his warmth and wit, was forced to make the most difficult decision of his career when a member of the royal family crossed every single line imaginable. The Graham Norton Show has always been a safe space. For over 2 decades, Graham has welcomed the biggest names in Hollywood, music, and yes, even royalty onto his famous red couch. His gentle Irish charm and quick wit have made celebrities feel comfortable enough to share their most personal stories, their funniest moments, and sometimes even their deepest secrets. But last night, something went terribly wrong. Prince Harry arrived at the BBC studios in London, looking polished and ready for what should have been a standard promotional interview. He was there to discuss his latest charitable endeavor, a cause that should have been close to his heart. The audience was packed with fans, cameras were rolling, and Graham was doing what he does best, making everyone feel welcome. "Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Prince Harry," Graham announced with his trademark smile, gesturing toward the entrance as the audience erupted in applause. Harry walked onto the stage, waving to the crowd, but something felt different. Those who know Harry well later said his smile seemed forced, his movements stiff. He took his seat on the red couch, directly across from Graham, and the interview began innocently enough. "Harry, wonderful to have you here tonight," Graham said, leaning forward with genuine warmth. "Now, tell us about this new project you're working on. I understand it's very close to your heart." But instead of the thoughtful response everyone expected, Harry shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Well, Graham, before we get into that, I think we need to address something first." The audience sensed the tension immediately. Graham's eyebrows raised slightly, a sign that even he was caught off guard. "Oh? What would you like to address? I'm not happy with the questions you've prepared for tonight," Harry said, his voice taking on an edge that made everyone in the studio uncomfortable. "I was told this interview would focus solely on my charity work, nothing else." Graham maintained his composure, something he's mastered after years in the business. "Of course, Harry, that's exactly what we planned to discuss. I'm not sure what the concern island." "The concern," Harry said, raising his voice slightly, "is that I've heard you like to ambush your guests. I've heard you ask personal questions that weren't agreed upon beforehand." The audience was dead silent now. This wasn't the playful banter they'd come to expect from Graham's show. Graham himself looked genuinely confused and, frankly, a bit hurt by the accusation. "Harry, I'm not sure where you're getting that information," Graham replied calmly, "but I can assure you that's not how we operate here. We've always been respectful of our guests' boundaries. Perhaps we can just start over and focus on your charity work?" But Harry wasn't backing down. In fact, he was just getting started. "You know what, Graham? I think the problem is that people like you think you can treat people like me however you want. You think because we come on your show, we owe you something." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Graham's face remained kind, but those who know him could see the hurt in his eyes. "Harry, I'm truly sorry if you feel that way. That was never my intention. Why don't we take a quick break and sort this out?" "No," Harry said firmly, holding up his hand. "I think we need to address this right here, right now, in front of everyone. I'm tired of people in the media thinking they own me." Graham tried one more time to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Harry, I understand you might be feeling some pressure, but this really isn't the place for this discussion. Our audience came here to hear about your wonderful charity work. Let's give them what they came for." "Don't tell me what our audience wants," Harry snapped, his voice now clearly agitated. "I know what they want. They want authenticity. They want someone who isn't going to play your little games." The audience was shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some were looking around, wondering if this was part of some elaborate setup. But Graham's reaction made it clear this was all too real. His face had gone from confused to genuinely concerned. "Harry, please," Graham said softly. "Let's just talk about your charity. That's why you're here, right? To help people? You want to talk about helping people?" Harry's voice was getting louder now. "How about we talk about how people like you have made my life miserable? How about we talk about the invasion of privacy, the constant scrutiny?" Graham remained calm, professional, and kind. "I understand those are real concerns for you, Harry, but I'm not your enemy here. I'm just a talk show host who wanted to give you a platform to share your good work." "A platform?" Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean a stage for your own entertainment? You media people are all the same? You pretend to care, but really you just want to exploit us for ratings?" The audience was now visibly uncomfortable. Some were whispering among themselves. Others were looking toward the exits. This was not what anyone had signed up for when they came to watch the Graham Norton show. Graham took a deep breath, his professionalism shining through despite being under attack. "Harry, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding here. I've always tried to treat my guests with respect and dignity. If I've somehow failed to do that with you, I sincerely apologize. But perhaps we could discuss this privately after the show?" "There's nothing to discuss privately," Harry said, his voice now filled with disdain. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You want to smooth things over, sweep it under the rug, pretend like everything is fine? Well, I'm not playing that game anymore." Graham could see this was spiraling completely out of control. The veteran host, who had navigated countless challenging interviews with grace, was facing something he had never encountered before. A guest who seemed determined to destroy not just the interview, but the very foundation of mutual respect that his show was built upon. "Harry," Graham said, his voice still calm but with a firmness that hadn't been there before, "I think you need to take a moment to collect yourself. This isn't fair to our audience, and it's not fair to the charity you came here to support." But mentioning the charity was apparently the wrong thing to say. Harry's face darkened even further. "Don't you dare lecture me about fairness. Don't you dare bring up my charity work like you actually care about it. You only invited me here because I'm a prince, because having royalty on your show makes you look important." The accusation hit Graham visibly. For a moment, the mask of television professionalism slipped, and the audience could see genuine hurt in his eyes. "That's not true, Harry. I invited you here because you're doing important work, and I thought our viewers would be inspired by it." "Inspired?" Harry scoffed loudly. "The only thing that inspires people about me is my title. And you know what? I'm sick of it. I'm sick of people like you pretending to be my friend just to get something from me." Graham straightened in his chair. "Harry, I need you to stop right there. You're making accusations that simply aren't true, and you're being incredibly unfair." "Unfair?" Harry's voice rose to a near shout. "You want to talk about unfair? How about the fact that I can't go anywhere without someone like you trying to dissect my life for entertainment? How about the fact that every time I try to do something good, people like you find a way to make it about something else?" The audience was now openly uncomfortable. Some people were actually getting up to leave. Camera operators were looking toward the control room, clearly unsure whether they should keep filming. But Graham, to his credit, remained focused on his guest, still trying to salvage what was left of the interview. "Harry, I understand you're frustrated, but you're directing your anger at the wrong person. I've never done anything to hurt you or your family. I've always been respectful in everything I've said about you publicly." "Respectful?" Harry laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call it when you make jokes about my personal life? When you and your celebrity guests sit around making fun of the royal family for cheap laughs?" Graham's face showed genuine confusion. "Harry, I've never made fun of you or your family. If you have a specific example, I'd like to know about it, because that's not something I would ever do." "Oh, please," Harry said, waving his hand dismissively. "Don't act like you don't remember the jokes about my wife, the comments about our decisions, the way you and your guests roll your eyes whenever the royal family is mentioned." "Harry, that simply isn't true," Graham said firmly. "And frankly, I'm starting to think you've confused me with someone else. Or you've been given some very bad information about what happens on this show." This seemed to infuriate Harry even more. "Are you calling me a liar? Are you seriously sitting there, in front of all these people, calling a member of the royal family a liar?" Graham took a deep breath. The audience could see him wrestling with how to respond. "I'm not calling you a liar, Harry. I'm saying you're mistaken, and I'm asking you to please lower your voice and show some respect for the people who came here tonight to support you." "Respect?" Harry stood up abruptly, startling everyone in the studio. "You want to lecture me about respect, when you've spent years making money off gossiping about my family?" "Harry, please sit down," Graham said, his voice still remarkably controlled given the circumstances. "You're making a scene, and this isn't helping anyone." "I'll make whatever scene I want to make," Harry shot back. "This is my interview, and I'll conduct it however I see fit." That was the moment when Graham Norton, the man known for his endless patience and kindness, finally reached his limit. He stood up slowly, looked directly at Harry, and said something that shocked everyone in the studio. "No, Harry, this is my show, and I will not allow you to disrespect me, my crew, or my audience any longer." The silence that followed was deafening. Harry seemed stunned that someone had finally stood up to him. Graham continued, his voice steady but resolute. "I've tried to be understanding. I've tried to give you space to express your concerns. But what you're doing right now is unacceptable. You're being rude, You're being accusatory, and you're ruining what should have been a lovely evening for everyone here." Harry's mouth fell open. Clearly, he wasn't used to being spoken to this way. "Excuse me? Did you just tell me that I'm ruining the evening? Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" And there it was. The moment that would be replayed on social media for weeks to come. Graham Norton looked Prince Harry directly in the eyes and said, "I know exactly who I'm talking to. I'm talking to someone who has forgotten that being royal doesn't give you the right to treat other people poorly." The audience gasped. Some actually applauded. Harry looked like he'd been slapped. "How dare you speak to me that way? I'm a member of the British royal family, and I'm a television host who's been doing this job for over 20 years. Graham replied calmly. "I've interviewed kings and queens, presidents and prime ministers, and the biggest celebrities in the world, and not one of them has ever behaved the way you're behaving right now." Harry was speechless for a moment, but then his anger returned with a vengeance. "This is ridiculous. I don't have to sit here and listen to this from some Irish talk show host who thinks he's important." The ethnic slur hung in the air like poison. The audience reacted with audible shock. Graham's face went pale, and for the first time all evening, he looked truly angry. "That's enough," Graham said quietly, but his voice carried throughout the entire studio. "Security, please escort Prince Harry from the building." "What?" Harry looked genuinely surprised. "You can't throw me out. I'm a guest on your show." "You were a guest on my show," Graham corrected him. "Now you're just someone who needs to leave." Security guards were already moving toward the stage. Harry looked around wildly, as if expecting someone to come to his defense. But the audience, the crew, everyone was staring at him with a mixture of shock and disgust. "This is outrageous," Harry shouted as the security guards approached. "You can't treat me this way. I'm going to make sure everyone knows about this." Graham nodded calmly. "I hope you do, Harry. I hope you tell everyone exactly how you behaved here tonight, because I'm certainly going to." As Harry was escorted off the stage, still protesting loudly, Graham turned to his stunned audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for what you've just witnessed. This is not what the Graham Norton Show is about, and it's not what you deserve tonight." The audience erupted in applause, a standing ovation that lasted for several minutes. Graham Norton, the consummate professional, had stood up to entitled behavior and defended not just himself, but everyone in that studio who had been subjected to Harry's outburst. When the applause finally died down, Graham smiled sadly. "Well, that wasn't quite how we planned to spend our evening, was it?" The audience laughed, grateful for his attempt to lighten the mood. "But you know what? Sometimes standing up for what's right is more important than keeping the peace." And with that, Graham Norton proved once again why he's not just a great television host, but a class act who won't compromise his values, no matter who's sitting on his famous red couch.